Stephen Covey said most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. What are your thoughts on this? There was a workplace seminar exercise thing I went to where we had to listen to our conversation partner, and all we have to do is to summarize what they said to make them feel fully understood. No response of our own other than reiterating their points. Then they have to judge us based on whether we got their main points, or if we were missing important parts, or if we added anything they didn't say. Took quite a bit of effort because we were so used to just listening for keywords while our minds go elsewhere. Edit. It's called active listening, as a few commenters mentioned. Great exercise. I've done that too. It's excellent training and really forces you to focus if you've never done that before. Regarding customer service, helping an upset customer feel heard and understood goes a great distance to helping them feel that their complaint has been resolved. It's tempting to try to quickly think of a solution for them, but truthfully, if you were spending all your time thinking, then you were not actually listening to them. Spend quality time thoroughly exploring what they were saying and ask clarifying questions to make sure you fully understand. Frequently, the customer's demeanor will become more positive, and suddenly you two are working together to solve the problem instead of it being an adversarial situation where someone wins and someone loses. A friend who needed some serious marriage counseling with his wife now lived by this rule. When they were arguing, neither is allowed to respond to a statement until they have restated what was said, demonstrating understanding of it to their spouse's satisfaction. And it occurred to me that aside from making sure everyone is moving forward in the same direction, the practice slows down the pace of the argument, allowing everyone to take their words into consideration before just blurting out, "I hate you. You ruined my life." I feel like that's the same. You are listening to reply. Just in this case, you reply with what they've just said. That's really good advice. I need to start doing that. When people think you are dying, they really listen to you, instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. Chuck Palahniuk. Fight Club 1996. A recent cancer diagnosis refutes this in my limited experience. It's amazing how quickly it becomes about them, but that's all right. I've never much liked talking about myself. Edit. Don't be too sad for me. Guys, I got my first COVID vaccine 2 days ago because of it. The irony in that scene is that Marla Singer said waiting for their turn to speak in unison with Tyler. At first this seems to indicate that they were in sync, but it also indicates that she was waiting for her turn to speak, thus proving his point. That's a good quote. You just broke the first rule. The more I read from Palahniuk, the more I think he was just one of the first to have literal statements publicized. Hey man, I've been meaning to tell you about Saturday. Hey man, I was just wondering about if you'd like to do something with me on Saturday. Good morning, Monday's right. Did you do anything fun this weekend? Two thoughts. Speak in such a way as others love to listen to you. Listen in such a way as others love to speak to you. I got the second one figured out. That first one, though, as a therapist, this is my mantra. This. So much this also. If anyone has any tips on how to be better at that, let me know. Got it. Speak like Trump. Tell everyone what they want to hear. Target the more easily manipulated and repeat simple, easy to understand words as much as you can while never saying anything of substance. Listen like Joe Rogan. Just nod whatever they say and say ye. Whoa, that's awesome, really. Love this. Goes both ways. I am aware that I am not doing a great job at listening, but am really struggling to find ways to improve that don't seem disingenuous while I am working on it. Also, usually the best of intentions go out of the window in the heat of the moment, and I am lucky enough to say I don't get much opportunity to train it during arguments because there just aren't many. This is definitely true for me. I've had to make a conscious effort to stop myself. It's not a trait I like about myself. When I realize I am waiting for the other person to stop talking so I can tell them something, I force myself not to and ask them a question about whatever they have just been saying. I don't always realize, but I'm trying. What is ironic is that you doing it won't make anyone else do it. These things should be taught in grade school on how to properly function in society. I have many acquaintances that are narcissists, and although they have lots of friends and huge social circle, when you are alone with them you realize how fucking out of touch with reality they are. Lol, I feel like I probably go the other way. I'm far more interested in what other people have to say and feel like a burden if what I'm going to say isn't going to make them laugh or something. Probably just a healthy dose of social anxiety, but it sounds like a pretty cool skill to just be able to rapid-fire conversation with less than total input from the others in it. I notice the same thing about myself. I'd like to think of myself as a good listener, but that's definitely not always the case. A good practice is, even when you really do want to say something in response, is say your piece, but always make sure to tie it back to what the previous person said at the end of your story. At least you would wait for the other person to stop talking before you would tell them something. I have poor impulse control and accidentally cut people off mid-sentence with an entirely different subject. I'm working on it though, and now notice more often when I do it. Then I apologize and try to go back to what they were saying. But when I don't know what to say, I will just start asking them questions based on what they just told me. You can have an entire conversation without giving up any personal information about yourself by just acting interesting in what the other person is saying. A lot of the time, they don't even notice that they did most of the talking. Absolutely true. I heard a better version applicable to almost all arguments: not listening to understand, merely pausing to reload. The version I knew was not listening, merely waiting their turn to speak, but I might like yours better. Agreed. I have also heard people don't want to hear your opinion. They want to hear their opinions coming out of your mouth, which I think is definitely true. Pausing to reload is exactly how I feel when I argue with my girlfriend. She will let me talk, but has an instant rebuttal ready to go the instant I pause, telling me she hasn't taken any time to process what I said. She doesn't want to have a conversation or debate. She wants to win a fight, and has already dug in on her position and won't be swayed. I'm not sure what to say. I was listening. I prefer Covey's diction, looking for keywords in your story to top it with my better story that is vaguely related to what you said. I'm glad you brought up keys. Reminds me of my trip to the Florida Keys. Nods politely. Polite agreement noise. So anyway, back to what I was saying. Back to what I was looking for a go in, or a please continue that I could upvote. I like this better. I find the opposite to be equally true, that most people do not speak with the intent to explain. They speak with the intent to get something said. I believe combination of the two has led to a lot of frustration and likely even war. We should all listen to understand and speak to explain. Yes, there are lots of people who refuse to listen what they don't want to listen and be unable to explain their views in a logical and objective way. I've noticed, though, that if you only listen to understand and speak to explain, people constantly complain about how quiet you are. So true. My dad, when he says something and I agree with him, he gets angry and says, "Why do you always say yes?" And when I disagree with him, he says, "You always have an answer ready." Also, some people just talk and say the same thing 5x times, and you are just waiting to reply, and they just go on in circles. At the same time, it depends on the context of the conversation. A serious debate or deeply personal conversation, yes, this is common and a problem. But a friendly light conversation or awkward small talk where the chief goal is to keep the conversation going and have fun. Continue. I want to understand. Terminer Everyman 15 hours ago as opposed to just launching into the chorus of "Tell me more" from Greece. Not knowing the context of this quote, I think it's spot on. I also think it works on two levels. One, the internet democratized mass communication. Instead of reading a book or periodical, I can now consume variety of media made by just about anyone and respond to it with the potential for mass viewership. Case in point, I have read your question and quote, and instead of pondering on it by myself, I am responding to it. 2. The internet made everyone a superficial expert. I can briefly look up fairly complex topics and know a single point trivia or data without learning or knowing anything else about the subject. A classic example would be a debate between friends that results in rapid Google searches to find and support points. In this case, neither is really looking to learn about the subject. Rather, they simply want a seemingly smart response. This is absolutely true. From the arguments I have been in that people are Googling things they will not remember anything from that argument 24 hours later. The quote predates the internet by quite a bit. Covey's book was a bestseller in 1989 and quite obviously was geared towards in-person communication without reference materials backing them. Not saying you were wrong, you were absolutely right, but I think Op's point is much broader and even more universal than the one you were making. It's true, but it's not necessarily as bad as it sounds. The wish to communicate your own experience to others, and the fact that doing so is beneficial to our mental health, is still a positive thing overall. I also think that a lot of this is mistaken as self-importance, when it's more often than not a sign of empathy to try to relate your own experience to that of someone else. After reading all this, I feel like I do canvas wrong because as a response to something said by a person, I usually bring something up from my own experience, and as you said, it is trying to build empathy and connection. Maybe it doesn't come across that way, that's true. I do this a lot when I'm listening to someone's problems. I hope it helps them solve the problem as well as it lets them talk about it more, which helps me understand them better, and it also helps them to talk it out. Thank you for putting it into words. I almost always try to relate to what someone is saying because I find it easier to be empathetic, as you said, when I imagine how I would feel in their position. I also tend to prefer it when the person I'm talking to does the same. For instance, if I'm having a conversation with someone and talking about how I feel about something that happened to me, I actually appreciate it when the person I'm talking to tells me about a time they've been in a similar situation or felt the way I'm feeling. Usually the sort of response like, I know what you were going through and how difficult it is, and it sucks that you have to deal with this, or anything to that accord, depending on the subject. Even if they can't perfectly understand my feelings, it means a lot to me that they made the effort to try. On the other hand, when I get responses that are more like "that must be hard" or "I'm sorry" instead of anything open-ended or receiving any input that really adds to the conversation, I feel like I'm boring the person or that they don't have anything to say. It's a little better when someone asks questions about what you were saying, but in my experience it tends to make me feel like I'm talking to a therapist instead of a friend, if that makes sense. I really just want to hear what people have to say. You know what I mean. Absolutely true. I only read this post so I could respond to it. I read it with the understanding that this is someone's homework assignment. It's true for many people. I've caught myself doing this on occasion, and I always try to correct my mindset. Mustachny equestrian 16 hours ago. I think it is the default, honestly. Maybe not biologically, but certainly culturally a 12. It's frustrating when you take the time to articulate coherent, well-thought-out arguments, and all you get are "yeah, buts." "Yeah, but what about?" "Yeah, but have you considered?" "Yeah, but" insert pretentious, self-indulgent drivel trying to look smart. Yes, I have considered a long time ago, and I addressed this in my argument. Read it and don't waste my time. Yeah, but my ad hominem is better than your coherent argument. I'm guilty of this one pretty bad. A lot of times I agree broadly with a person's argument and end up saying, "Yeah, that's true, but," and then whatever I think. I have been considering how to be a bit better of a listener. It is also funny how it often takes them like 2 seconds to reply and not even thinking about what you said for a minute, especially if it is a complicated subject. How can you have this fast food response ready for something I've spent days considering? I realize you can't give a well-thought-out response immediately, but then at least admit that, and say you don't know or that you have to think about it. It is incredibly arrogant for someone to dismiss your well-thought-out ideas with a quick answer. If I'm philosophizing or discussing a complicated subject, I want to do just that, discuss it. Not, have you just dismissed the idea so you can go on about what you think. Lie kings have a difficult road ahead of them if their game plan is to survive until overtime. That's fascinating. It reminds me of the time I went hiking in the Andes and ran into Stephen King, of all people. Dukas Feast 16 hours ago. Republicans have been trying to kill protections for overtime pay 45 reply share report save. Who's Stephen Covey? Stephen Richards Covey was an American educator, author, businessman, and keynote speaker. His most popular book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The fact that you have a reply in mind does not mean you are not listening. And if you don't have a reply in mind doesn't mean you are. Johnson read 16 hours ago. True, but you know the type of people he is talking about. For 10 more reply share report save. Continue this thread. Yes, there is a lot of truth in this, but sometimes it's necessary. When I was a kid, I was quiet and didn't know how to carry on a conversation. I did a lot of listening, but didn't have many replies, and it made for awkward conversations. When I got older and started chatting online to people, I learned how to make small talk and keep a conversation going, and that involved thinking about what you were going to say next while someone is talking. About 5 years later, I reunited with an old friend, and he immediately noticed the change in me and said I was much more fun to talk to now. I'm not saying I don't listen, because I still do. But you have to do both at the same time, and some people are just better at multitasking like that. Yeah, I agree with this. If you only listen, then you'll basically have next to no time to think about what to reply with.
Like and subscribe for more Reddit content. Watch the next video at the top of your screen.